Hello, my name is Jason Reichl, and you're listening to Risk Management Brick by Brick. I'm fascinated with people who are helping build and maintain the physical world around us. On each episode of this podcast, we'll dive in with a risk manager, speak to them about how technology plays a role in this process.
Hi, welcome back to another episode of Brick by Brick. I'm your host, Jason Reichl. Today, I'm joined with Thomas, the co-founder and CEO of Eli Report. Hey, Thomas, thank you for joining us on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Jason.
To get started, why don't we start a little bit about your background, what the company is doing. I know you're a co-founder and CEO, so that means that this is really close to your heart. But I want to understand sort of the story of how you got to Eli Report and what that is exactly.
Wonderful. Thanks for that. I have a finance background. I'm a recovering investment banker. I like to say I'm also a multi-time startup co-founder. And this particular one crossed my desk in 2018. Sat down with some guys that were living in condos, and we're having the conversation about why when you spend $10,000 on a used car, you get a complete report of its history. But when you spend $1 million or thereabouts on a condo, you ended up with a bunch of paperwork. And we thought we could fix that. And that's what we've been doing at Eli Report. Fun story. Eli stands for every little item, which is what we hope to tell you about your condo or your HOA.
And so is it a B2C product or is it a B2B product?
It's become both. We serve a lot of real estate brokerages. We also serve buyers, owners, and condo board members, as well as property managers and other stakeholders that serve these communities.
Why I wanted to have you on Brick by Brick is because I wanted to talk about the intersection of this information as it relates to risk. And I wanted to talk about, the use case is obvious. If you're going to buy something that expensive, you're going to want the full history. But I'm very interested to understand how it's been worked into insurance flows, into risk flows, into why is this information so valuable in these other areas? Maybe that in the beginning, it sounds like the idea was, hey, this is a consumer product, a report system, a Carfax for, condos makes total sense. But it seems to have a lot of application outside of that for the industry.
It does.
So
I guess it creates real mutual wins.
Yes, right. And connecting that information that not everyone may have had access to. So why don't we start with how maybe you guys are seeing your 2025 and what you're really focused on for 2025?
For us, it's about regional growth. We've now got ourselves established in our home jurisdiction. I'm Canadian, so we started in British Columbia, but we offer Eli Report across North America. And for us, it's really about continuing our geographic expansion because we figured out how to add value to both the communities and those that serve them.
So let's break that down. So as far as it relates to insurance, what kind of information are you providing, and how are you navigating or asking, or your customers are navigating working with their insurance with such a report?
For owners and buyers, it's understanding what your premiums are, what your deductibles are, and what you're on the hook for if there happens to be a loss that originates from your unit. And obviously, that's at the foundational place from which we started. We've moved up to a place where we've got enough intelligence at scale to be able to better inform the insurance providers about the premiums and deductibles of these communities and some of the other renewal terms. And that obviously makes it possible for them to go out and quote on business that they may not be aware of and have a better understanding of the communities and their risks. And that's meant that our partners have ended up doing millions of dollars of additional premium over the first years that we've worked with them. And they have managed to obviously serve these communities with better deductibles and premiums than they were getting before. So it's a mutual win.
Is this also playing a factor in, say, when a property management organization wants to buy a condo unit from another owner group and using this information to sort of build the risk profile for, say, a large scale property management groups as well? I mean, or is this is the most useful version of this is I own my condo? Like, is it across the whole sector that you're seeing sort of this information being applied?
It is across the whole sector, and it doesn't matter whether you're an individual or an institution that's acquiring additional properties. If you're interested in getting from 0 to 1, having a higher level understanding about how that community operates, and Eli Reports for you. We've launched a new tool called an annual benchmark report. That's piloting in certain markets where we have enough information density, and that allows for a detailed drill down to look at communities that are similar to yours and allow you to compare that building's budget and its future capital requirements and get a better understanding so that you can plan for the future.
What are some of the surprises that you've found in that annual benchmarking report?
There are a lot of communities that are paying for things that they could get more competitive rates on. So we're now starting to work with people that serve those communities and help them find those communities so that they can get better prices. So that's one thing. It's not generally an act of malice, but over time you get established with certain providers, their rates go up. There might be better competitive options out there in the market for you, whether you're talking about a landscaping company or whether you're talking about your insurance policy. So all of that stuff applies. The other thing in the annual benchmark report is we make people aware of the upcoming capital projects as projected by the engineers. So in most markets, there is a reserve study or a depreciation report, which is created to help communities understand when they need to have their roof, plumbing system, windows, siding, balconies, etc., looked at and updated, and what the capital schedule is, what the costs are, so that they can plan. We've seen a lot of noise out of Florida over the past year about all these special assessments as the structural studies that have been mandated in the wake of the Surfside tragedy have led to further investigative work by engineering firms. And now they've got to come up with the capital to undertake that work. Wherever you are in North America, buildings age, they do need new critical infrastructure, and planning for that effectively is something that I think most owners are not necessarily aware of. And we're doing a lot of work in that space to make sure that they're better prepared, both financially and in the physical sense, doing that work as they can to extend the life of
And
their
it makes sense
asset.
because you kind of have a more transparent view of where your fees are going, what people should be spending that money on, what the priority of that should be. And kind of, not to say that condos had a bad rap, but, the way that decisions were made at the board level were not always completely transparent. And maybe sometimes they were on what people thought, not necessarily on things that actually have impact to your insurance, your risk, and all these other kind of elements. So I completely understand how these tools work. Let's talk about the introduction of AI into your products and how AI has played a major role in that.
Absolutely. I mean, that was the game changer for us at the beginning, was being able to extract what matters and organize that both chronologically and by subject area, making it easy for someone to digest what might be 300 to 1,000 pages of building information in a summary interactive report. So now we've layered on GPT technology to summarize the findings from those, and we're continuing to use more extractive technologies to ensure that we get maximum value for these owners out of the information that they're able to provide to us.
One of the things that in your thing, it talks about the Stratus Solutions that you're part of, that you're another advisory board on, and technology. I just kind of want to understand, how does all of these things sort of affect property management, since you have such a vast experience in it? What are some of the predictions in 2025 and beyond that you have that really are going to be game changers for property management as a industry, not just what you guys are doing at Eli?
Yeah, I'm going to kind of connect property management with community asset management and community association management, because I think that those are very closely connected. Obviously, these individuals that run these communities and assist the condo boards in executing their duties are often extremely busy. They get a lot of information. They often manage multiple properties. Making sure that they're as efficient as possible is a priority. It'll help everyone involved. So if we can help owners get a better understanding of what the pet restrictions are or the parking restrictions are without having to interact and email or call the community association manager, then that's obviously a happier place for everyone, because that manager can be focused on the operations and the running of that community and the planning of any capital projects, whether it be an HOA or a condo building. So I think that that's one of the things that we're highly focused on. In terms of other things that we see coming down the pipe, obviously there's a lot that's happening with reducing your emissions, becoming more energy efficient, and finding ways in a changing climate to be more comfortable in your communities. A lot of us in the Pacific Northwest are in buildings that don't have heat pumps yet. So we've got heating systems, but not proper cooling systems. And obviously, if we're able to reduce our gas consumption and turn over to an energy efficient solution and get more EV chargers in the building, then that's something that I think we're seeing a lot more communities talking about.
Yeah, and expanding the scope of this beyond just the units, but future predicting on like climate change impacting that, or the fires, all the things that we have going on in the world, that as we rebuild these communities and as we expand existing communities, that we need to sort of have at the forefront of our predictive models. We talked about a lot about this on the podcast with construction companies. And,
Absolutely.
it used to be that you were on the hook for 7 years after you built the product, but now with climate change and all these other things, you could be on the hook for a lot longer. And so you have to have a much more diverse model in the beginning parts of the development of projects, right? I'm guessing the same thing is happening around, community planning and how things need to be organized, and adapting this to what the future holds for us. When you are talking to like a community about technology like this, and a lot of times the people in these communities or who run these organizations, this is not their full-time job, or this is not something that they're always thinking about.
Absolutely.
How do you make this kind of information digestible? How do you make this actionable? How do you tie this to outcomes?
Yeah, it's difficult with the kind of first level, I'm a new buyer trying to get into a community. So we take them from 0 to 1 with Eli Report. That's just giving them an understanding what's happening with that community. When you look at the annual benchmark report, that's for the condo board member. That's for the community association manager, the one who's responsible for making some of those decisions and those calls, determining and assessing the budget for the coming year and making some of those capital plans. And as you say, many of them don't have a background that's particularly well suited for this. Condo board members are volunteers. They're there out of the goodness of their heart. Some of them have the time and the bandwidth because they may be retired. Others are young professionals. They want to see things done efficiently. But everybody wants to make sure that their community is well maintained and that their fees are reasonable. So we try and help them understand how their fees compare to other communities of the same type and age. And we're going a bit further with that capital planning side to make sure that they understand what they should be putting away for these upcoming capital projects. And if they're not, making sure that owners are aware of what that special assessment or what that special levy might be, when it might come, and what it will be for. Because in a lot of communities, it's just not well discussed until it's on the immediate horizon, and then it hits the news. We don't want to see special assessments being news every day. Oh, this condo is being hit with a $150,000 special assessment. We want people to be better informed. And that's really what technology enables. And both a combination of artificial intelligence and, in our case, manual review to make sure that we're getting it right when it comes to tabular data from budgets, from the reserve fund studies. That's what is our secret sauce. That's what makes us a valuable partner for the construction companies, for the service providers that work with condo buildings all across North America.
Let's forecast a little bit. In the future, with climate change and the cost of building and material shortages and labor shortages, is your prediction for the future more of this community living, more of this, the association model being applied to organizations? Is this an increasing area, and is it really valuable for people to sort of understand the cost and planning associated with community living?
You look back a generation, Jason, and only 1 in 10 lived in a multifamily community or an association like this. And now we're nearly 1 in 3. The trend towards this type of living arrangement, both because you can make livable communities with a small footprint and because of affordability issues, I think is undeniable. So I see no slowdown in the continued densification of our population. The questions are, how do we make living in that type of community as affordable, as positive an experience for everyone within it as possible? So I think that that's the direction that we're moving.
So let's just talk a little bit about how does a community get involved? Is it a subscription fee? Is it an annual report fee? How does an organization get involved? And if you have partners on the construction side, how do they get involved in understanding and engaging with Eli?
Excellent. So the Eli Report's available to anyone. That report is available for free. We're piloting the annual benchmark report in certain markets. We're trying to price that affordably between $100 and $500, depending on whether you've got a small number of units or a large number of units. You can order our more detailed Eli Report on as many buildings as you want if you happen to be somebody that's interested in buying. And that per unit report price varies from $0 to $60. So the more
it's
money
accessible
you pay, the more detail
and
you
really
get.
a tool that people should put in and factor into de-risking. This is a risk podcast, de-risking the buying process and the management process of these ongoing situations.
Absolutely.
Really love the use of AI, really love the very practical planning mechanisms, really drawn to organizations that are helping people understand better something that in the past was a little opaque, a little difficult for people to grasp. So I really appreciate what you guys are doing. And is there any other piece of advice that you would have for a person entering into the market right now?
You just need to know what you're buying. You fall in love with your unit, you're responsible for your share of the whole thing. Use a tool like this. Eli Report's great. There are other ones out there that I'm sure you can find that will help you better understand that community, the lifestyle restrictions, the issues that are occurring within that community, whether it relates to mold or windows or elevators or security, all of that stuff. It becomes important. And then as we look at ourselves and at others in the space, you mentioned I'm a board member, an advisory board member of StrataPress. That's designed to help communities better manage their internal communication, their documents, their flow and their communication with both owners and with potential vendors. And there are hundreds of software similar to that across North America, all of which are trying to make community living a little bit easier, community association management a little bit easier. Because when you think about desk jobs, Jason, I can't think of one that's much more difficult than being a CAM. They really do get inundated with emails. They're often responsible for many properties. Anything that can be done to streamline their duties and to make
emotional,
life easier
right?
for
It's a
owners
place
to be there.
that these people
Hugely.
live, right? It's not just a business. It is very emotional. When
It
I
is.
had a leak in my roof and I wasn't sure who was responsible for it, as an example, right? So this is a
Very
thing that I
stressful.
felt personally many times in my life, especially when I was younger and in Austin, where I was living in condos on a regular basis.
For sure. And anything you can do to make that more understandable. You guys work with a lot of insurers. Obviously they want to know about the health of these buildings. They want to know that there are good risks, and they can offer competitive quotes if they've got the intelligence on those buildings and they can see what they're currently working with. And that's been a game changer for us and for the communities that we serve.
Thomas, let's play a game of risky or too risky. I'm going to give you a rapid fire question. You tell me if it's risky or too risky, and then we'll double click on it. I specifically picked things around running businesses with you. We live in very complicated times for technology companies. And so these are kind of related to that. So let's start with a simple one. Joining a startup without a clear financial stability or long-term funding in place, is that risky or too risky, or would you join up with an organization that you were aligned to their mission, but they didn't have a really clear picture on how financially they were going to make it work at this point in time?
That's risky, but fine. That's my life for the last decade.
Yeah. Diversification is the answer in that case, right? Make sure you have multiple things going. What about implementing a new untested technology across your entire customer base at once? Risky or too risky?
Oh, too risky. You gotta test. So for us, we'd be doing a lot of internal testing and piloting before we deploy.
I kind of got the answer to that in the way that you're talking about how you guys roll out things. How important is it, and this is a side question, but how important, when you use AI, we're still in a very early stage of accuracy and predictability, yet these tools undoubtedly are powerful, right? How do you gauge the risk to expose this information to people, knowing that they're making decisions on it at the same time as understanding the models are constantly developing? Even in my own test, what was feasible 6 months ago can be done what's feasible 6 months ago, but with a lot of extra work, is now just standard in the models. So how do you gauge when these things could be released to organizations, and what are tips you would give to other technologists to implement them?
The technology's changed so much since when we started. The generative capabilities in particular are just light years ahead of where they could have been imagined to be, even 5 short years ago. So, from my perspective, we've got a fundamental AI extractive technology, which is high recall and low precision, which for those that are not tech nerds means that we try to capture everything without missing anything. We might get a little noise. And then we layer on a GPT, which will summarize the information and try to put out what's most important. The risk about using something that is entirely generative, and there are some fabulous tools that can look at document sets like this and come up with some really great answers, is that they do still hallucinate and they can still make things up. And that's still a risk. So everyone needs to be aware of the uses, the usefulness, because it's huge, but the limitations of the certain types of technology that you're choosing to interact with.
Yeah, and then when you're implementing it behind the scenes from a technology standpoint, you have to really work at probability models so that you can call out when hallucinations are happening to the user. I think we're in a weird time to be a user of technology because we've relied so much on technology to be accurate, and now technology is not as accurate as it once was, but the power of the information that technology has far exceeds, in my opinion, the risk in some cases, because there was no way that you were going to read 3,000 pages of document and comprehend all of it, right? So you were probably, as a human being, going to hallucinate a lot about the conflicts in documentation that you'd be trying to read. And it's kind of showing, and this is the thing I always tell about people in technology, is technology, when it first emerges, in every example that I've ever existed, and I worked in the emergence of the cloud, I worked in the emergence of redundant server clusters. I worked in a lot of emerging areas, revenue operations for SaaS organizations, which I helped lead. Those sort of areas, when you first implement the technology, they bring a lot of flags that show us in our own human way the flaws in what we've already designed, the flaws, the conflicts between these 3,000 pages of documents that everyone says, well, lawyers looked at them, so they're flawless. And you're like, actually, it says two different things on these two different pages, right?
Yes.
Because we know in the business world, you've had one lawyer look at it, and then at some other point, some other lawyer look at it and they make suggestions, and they didn't catch the other thing because we've created this world around humanness, and that humanness is very open to flawed. And I think the AI is kind of pointing that out to us over and over and over again.
You're absolutely right. And, these technologies are constantly emerging, but what you've seen on the internet over the last 30 years has often, been conflicting, often not been complete. There's a lot of tools out there. I think as technology is continuing to evolve, it's going to get better and better. And people should be embracing and acknowledging that there's risk, but leveraging the capabilities of the tools that are now out there. And a lot of them are available inexpensively or free. So I think that they're fantastic.
Big question, founder, CEO. So this is the question I like to ask you. Accepting significant venture capital while surrendering a considerable degree of control over company decisions, risky or too risky for you?
Risky. I think it does depend upon the founder. We haven't taken venture money as Octo AI, but certainly we know a lot of our fellow startups in the prop tech and insurtech spaces that have. If you've got the right partner and the right alignment of vision, then I think that capital can be a game changer for you.
Closing question. I don't know if the advice I would give to people now is to go start a startup if you're a technologist. I don't even know what the future of SaaS really looks like. That being said, if I put you on the spot and said, hey, you're talking to someone with a young aspiring entrepreneur who's looking to start a tech company, what would be your advice for them?
The world needs more entrepreneurs. If they've got a vision, if they've got a problem that they think they can help people at large solve, my advice to them is to go for it. Make sure that you can pay your bills. Find a way to make sure that can happen. If it has to start as a side gig, as you develop your vision and you establish your customer base, then so be it. But the world needs lots of entrepreneurs. So I sure hope that they grab it and embrace it and run with it.
Thank you so much, Thomas, for your time. Thank you for everyone for listening to Brick by Brick. It's been great to get back at it. And I will see you at an event soon, Thomas. Thank you so much, man. Peace.
Thanks, Jason. Bye.
Risk Management Brick by Brick is brought to you by TrustLayer. Find out how TrustLayer manages risk so that the people can build the physical world around us. Head over to TrustLayer.io. And then make sure to subscribe to Risk Management Brick by Brick on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. On behalf of the TrustLayer team, thank you for listening.